Hello, I'm Nathan Lewis, and this is the sixth episode of a series on the gold standard. I've written 5 books about economics, including 3 about the gold standard. I'm also a fellow of the Wealth and Poverty Center at the Discovery Institute. My website is newworldeconomics.com. In our previous episodes, we have covered the why and the how of gold standard monetary systems. Once you grasp these concepts, it is not hard to see that a lot of what is said about gold standard monetary systems is wrong or at the very least contrary. Nevertheless, many people are hesitant to dismiss and discard the wrong views common among the expert class, views which are also embraced by the many followers of these supposed experts. Often, people attempt to somehow reconcile this error, finding some kind of compromise position. Of course, this will never work and results only in even more confusion. As we examined in Episode 5, the inadequacy and incompetence of this expert class resulted in the failure of the Bretton Woods Global Gold Standard System in 1971. The better economists of the time, including Robert Mundell, Frank Graham, and John Kenneth Galbraith, denounced this expert ignorance, which was followed by other mainstream economists in the 1990s. We also noted that this incompetence could be interpreted as weaponized incompetence. Nearly all academic economists, then and today, embrace the soft money paradigm. We should not be surprised if they spew disparaging nonsense about the competing classical hard money paradigm. Whether of the innocent or weaponized variety, these incompetent economists and the college textbooks that they wrote are wrong on several important details. Even though they could not or didn't want to understand the problems that led to the breakup of the Bretton Woods Global Gold Standard in 1971, they couldn't ignore the problems that were a major feature of the era. They had to write something about something. We must include here also some of the gold standard advocates of that time and continuing on to the present day. Although they embraced the classical hard money paradigm, they did not have the expertise to manage such a system properly or to explain to others how it should be done. Their incompetence and strange policy prescriptions are so prominent that we have to wonder if their motivation was really to mislead those people who wish to keep the value of currencies fixed to gold, as the better currencies had always been for many centuries up to that point. This includes Friedrich Hayek, who, throughout his monetary writings beginning in the 1920s and continuing to his death, was never a gold standard advocate and instead dismissed it at every opportunity in favor of his commodity basket ideas. Remember, this was in a time when currency values fixed to gold were the standard policy of all major governments, and when this gold standard policy was producing remarkable prosperity worldwide in the 1960s. It was, in effect, a subversive stance. Hayek's behavior contrasted strongly with Ludwig von Mises, who always favored gold. We must also include here Murray Rothbard, who, as a result of a convoluted line of reasoning that he called fractional reserve banking, insisted in the 1960s that the outcome of his preferred policy would be a decline in the value of the dollar by 95% versus gold, or a 20-to-1 devaluation. This was worse even than what really happened in the terribly inflationary 1970s. We must again remember, as with Hayek, that when Rothbard was popularizing these arguments, the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve were quite happy to maintain the $35 an ounce Bretton Woods gold parity if they could just figure out how. In effect, it was highly subversive. Number 1. A gold standard system does not require gold coins. So little is known about gold standard systems among most people that their first assumption is some kind of medieval coinage system, as they might have seen in a Hollywood movie about Robin Hood. One reason for this is that gold coins were outlawed by President Roosevelt in 1933, so that even in the 1960s, while the dollar's value was still pegged to gold, no Americans ever saw any gold coins. But this is also an example of a currency pegged to gold where gold coins are not necessary. Although technically such a system, or perhaps its modern equivalent using gold-linked crypto stablecoins, is certainly possible, it is somewhat politically weak. Gold coins should be available for use in regular monetary commerce, even though, 99% of the time, some kind of digital transaction system would likely be used instead. Even though technology has certainly improved since the days of Robin Hood, nevertheless, there is still no better means of achieving the goal of stable currency value than by fixing a currency's value to gold. Number 2. Many different kinds of gold standard systems can be used. We use the term gold standard system here to encompass many different kinds of systems that all share the quality of having currency values fixed to gold. This includes a medieval coinage system of full-weight gold coins, and also the system of banknotes and digital bank reserves fixed to gold without any gold coins, as was used during the administration of John F. Kennedy. Once we introduce so many different approaches, inevitably people prefer one over another. Hardly anyone today would prefer the medieval coinage system. This gives rise to a certain sort of rhetorical tactic, the claim that such and such a proposal isn't really a gold standard. What they mean is it does not fit the specific policy details that they prefer. In the 1920s, some currencies were convertible to gold coinage, as in the United States. Some currencies were convertible by the issuer only to large gold bars, as in Britain. Some currencies were commonly convertible only to a foreign currency that was itself fixed to gold, as in Japan. Even though some individual might prefer one approach over another, for a variety of good reasons, they were all gold standard systems. One result of this rhetorical tactic is to make the gold standard disappear. Many, or even all, of the actual, real-life, functional gold standard systems, commonly in use before 1971 or even before 1913, don't fit these supposed qualifications of a real or true or pure gold standard system. It appears that everything was not really a gold standard. Number 3, 100% reserve systems are not necessary and were very uncommon. A 100% reserve gold standard system is a system where there is bullion held in a vault equivalent to all the banknotes or other monetary liabilities of the issuer. This system has existed in the past, notably the Bank of Amsterdam of the 17th century or the Bank of Hamburg of the 18th. But it is quite rare for the simple reason that it is not profitable. Even the Bank of Amsterdam was found to have been secretly making loans as a way of making a profit. By the 19th century, central banks such as the Bank of England, and certainly private issuers, as were common in the United States, held a large percentage of their reserve assets in the form of government debt or private sector lending. The Bank of England tended to keep about one-third of its reserve assets in gold, about one-third in government bonds, and one-third in private lending. The 100% reserve system is making a comeback today in the form of crypto stablecoins fixed to gold, in part because digital technology allows companies to efficiently charge transaction or holding fees instead of relying on dead assets to provide profitability. Historically, there are a lot of different ways in which reserve assets and other details can be managed in the context of a highly reliable gold standard system. Number 4, gold conversion has nothing to do with the balance of payments. In Episode 5, we examined how inflows and outflows of gold bullion via the convertibility function arise whenever the value of the currency is either a little higher or a little lower than the fixed gold parity. The effect of this is to expand or reduce the base money supply, which then returns the value of the currency to its fixed value parity. This process has no direct connection to trade or the balance of payments that describes international trade. The economists of the 1950s and 1960s were, as we examined earlier, highly incompetent. But they had to say something about the chronic outflows of gold reserves of the time and the persistent sagging of the dollar or other major currencies against their gold parities. As incompetent people do, they made up some funny notions regarding the balance of payments that were completely false. Economists of the time were so delusional that they actually claimed a crisis of a persistent U.S. current account deficit when the U.S. ran a current account surplus for every year of the 1960s and most of the 1950s as well. It should be clear why we today have such a low opinion of these economists. This includes the economist Robert Triffin, who made some silly statements in the late 1950s. People who don't know what they are talking about, nevertheless, still keep on talking. Related to this is the notion that a gold standard system somehow results in balanced trade, that is, no persistent current account surplus or deficit, which would be inevitably balanced by some deficit or surplus in the financial account. Rather, we should expect that, if both currencies are on a gold standard system and thus have fixed exchange rates and free trade, substantial capital flows may arise, also mirrored in current account figures. This is indeed what we see. During the 19th century, many countries had large current account surpluses and deficits. Also, these trade figures were completely unrelated to gold inflows and outflows. Number 5, there is no price-specie flow mechanism. Textbook descriptions of the gold standard usually mention something called a price-specie flow mechanism, which doesn't exist in real life. The notion supposedly arises from some comments made by British philosopher David Hume in the 18th century, but Hume was actually making the opposite point, that gold, like water as he said, is the same value everywhere. The better economists have always known that the price-specie flow mechanism hypothesis is nonsense. An extensive debunking of the idea can be found in the 1995 book The Anatomy of an International Monetary Regime, the Classical Gold Standard, 1880 to 1914, by Giulio Gallerati. But for the sake of brevity, we will take the opinion of Filippo Cesarano, an economist at the Bank of Italy. In his 2006 book, Monetary Theory and Bretton Woods, the Construction of an International Monetary Order, he called the price-specie flow mechanism, quote, a myth that in no way reflects how the gold standard actually worked. It is convenient for us to have such a handy test of an economist's competence in monetary affairs. Any economists who think this is a real thing can be quickly dismissed. Number 6. The money supply of a gold standard system is unrelated to gold mining. We have seen how gold standard monetary systems in the 19th century or today in the form of crypto stablecoins or similar ETFs can expand and contract to any degree necessary depending on fluctuating demand for the product. The money supply has no relation to gold mining. As one example, in 1775, the American colonies had about $12 million of gold and silver coins in circulation. In 1900, along with the growth of the U.S. economy, this had expanded to 1,952 million of coins and banknotes, an increase of 163 times. This far exceeds the increase in above-ground gold due to gold mining, which increased about 3.4 times during this period. The increase in the base money supply of Britain during the same period was 7.5 times, which reflected the needs of Britain and the demand for British pounds as a monetary device. While above-ground gold increases at a steady rate of about 2% per year due to mining, the base money supply of a gold standard system can expand and contract as needed, such that supply meets demand at the parity price. This does not produce some smooth curve of growth, but quite a lot of short-term volatility. This volatility does not have significant economic effects because it arises as a consequence of the mechanisms which keep the value of the currency stable versus its benchmark. Related to this, the gold standard system does not somehow restrict economic growth due to a restricted money supply. The United States economy certainly grew quite a lot during the 19th century. It was the most successful economy of that time. Gold mining might seem like a terrible waste of time and effort. It seems that we simply dig up gold and then bury it again in the vaults of central banks. But gold mining never slowed down, even after the entire world left the gold standard system in 1971. Actually, it only got larger. Today, more than half of all the gold ever mined in all of human history has been mined since 1971. Perhaps, with all major currencies now unreliable fiat junk, humans need gold more than ever to serve as a reliable store and standard of value. So many dumb things have been said about the gold standard over the decades that to address them all would take forever. A gold standard system is merely a system that fixes the value of a currency to gold, much like more than half of all countries in the world today who aim to keep their currency's values fixed to some benchmark, commonly the dollar or euro. With these examples to guide you, it should not be hard to identify many other fallacies common today, even among the gold standard advocates themselves. The most important thing is not to take the opinions of supposed experts very seriously. If these experts knew what they were doing, then the Bretton Woods World Gold Standard System would not have collapsed in 1971, and the US dollar would still be worth $35 per ounce of gold, or 889 milligrams, even today. In our next episode, we will look at humanity's long history of using gold and silver as a basis of money, literally back to the beginnings of civilization around 3000 BC, both in the West and also the East.